This is Judge DW with Revolution News and Information. This is a Matrexit discussion group, episode 14. I'd like to go over the group disclaimer real quick. Information provided in this discussion group is for educational information, entertainment purposes only. Please keep in mind everyone's personal, individual circumstances or situation is different and may be subject to change based on a variety of thoughts and opinions. Individual competent person do his or her own research or homework if they feel otherwise. The broadcaster and host of this discussion group cannot be held accountable for any information shared. And shares of this information help others. We want this group to be about thought-provoking information to actually help those who may be unaware of certain topics discussed. Conclusion information discussed is not to be construed as legal advice. Please seek a competent attorney. Things real quick. The board is going to be unlocked. Nobody's going to be muted, so please be kind and mute yourself so you don't have nothing to say. First thing, we can actually hear the question, comment, or concern from the other individual. If you are muted and you don't have a mute key on your cell phone, you push ***. The conference board here. If you accidentally get muted or you mute yourself out. I'd like to open up Q&A session. Brian made a point earlier just now that I have questions. So we'd like to get to them now before we open up the group. I yield.
Hey guys, how you doing this evening? Like I had mentioned to Judge DW, I've had quite a few questions, people messaging me and things like that this past week regarding authentication or the birth certificate or several other things. And so if anybody was on the line right now, question that you posed to me this week or not, if you had something you want to bring up or something you want to ask about, this is the time to do it. We have anybody that wanted to jump on?
Hi, my name is Cynthia. And
Hi, Cynthia, how are you doing?
I'm doing good. I've asked a lot of questions this week online. I asked a question which I really would like to ask, and that is, to get the live birth certificate, a live birth, how do we get our children into becoming our own children without being parent ad-lims with the state? And how does this affect our children's schooling?
All right, well, as far as it affecting your children's schooling, I'll start with your last question first. I don't have any first-hand knowledge of that myself, okay? All I can tell you is what I've seen from other people, okay? And other people, their life a lot easier, actually, with the school. And I've heard a few people talking about getting their kids, like, for instance, if, you absolutely have to send them to a public school, to get them in there without providing certain documentation. And the kids were basically in the school, kind of listed under the header of private. And anything that ever went on with the kids, for instance, while they're in school, the principal would be in direct contact with the parent, rather than some of the other crazy methods they use, like hoping the kid will take a note home or something like that. As far as, if you're doing your certificate of live birth and all that getting authenticated, which it's just basically evidence of a agent in an organization is what that is. The children, really need, I've heard 7 years, I've heard 3 years. Children, or their property rather, as they're legally looked at, need to be claimed. There needs to be an affidavit of parentage done by both parents if possible. Right, and that needs to be submitted into the court for the county that the nativity occurred at. And that's the way I would go about that. And you can go and get your child's certificates authenticated as well, you know, knocked out while they're young. Hopefully a day is going to come where it's not a mandatory thing that has to be done, because it can be confusing for some people between doing it at the state and then the federal level and the ways they're going about it. So, you know, I would hope the day will come where that isn't something that really needs to be done. I can't tell you 100% right now that it's something that absolutely has to be done. But I don't see any harm in it. I've heard stories with no evidence to the contrary, but, you know, I haven't experienced any negative ramifications from it, and I haven't myself seen anybody else experience anything negative from it either. So, but yeah, you can get that done, and I've even heard of people getting it done for their parents, and a few reasons I don't want to get into right now, but should do that within passing. But that's that's a whole other topic to itself. Does that answer your questions regarding the children?
Yeah, it did answer a big portion of it. I'm a mom with a son that's legally blind, and I'm having a run-in with the school system. And we had an IEP meeting, and the public schools, I just found out that I was just parent at them. And I got very angry, and I pointed my finger at them, and I said, "Get your hands off my child." And so I felt then it would be necessary to go ahead and get the affidavit of being a parent to my child instead of the state trying to claim my child, because I don't appreciate the way they treat my child. If I was to treat my child that way, I would get it from the Child Protective Services.
Unfortunately, the schools have been used in the direction of thought of parents patriae to do the raising of the children. I mean, we've got a little upcoming Miss Dictator who a few years ago had said that it takes a village, you know, and a lot of other officials who've come out. I think somebody from Department of Children and Families had come out, and she had said something in regards to, you know, that people need to realize that their children are not theirs. They belong to the community, you know. And I spoke of not having any firsthand knowledge myself. I mean, you know, now I've got a daughter that is going to be 27 this year. Unfortunately, I wasn't the one who raised her, you know, and that's why I don't have any firsthand knowledge with stuff on that. And with someone who had children in the school. And I would go to the parent-teacher conferences with her regarding one of the children or whatever the case was. And I think it was after my second meeting that I'd gone to that uninvited to come to any more of the meetings. Basically because I know who the school is, what they really are, what they really claim to be. And in the meetings, I got them to admit it, and they didn't like that. So,
well, this school system that I'm fighting, when my son was back in 5th grade, went from November to March, telling me my son was unfit for public school. He needed to be in a able school. And when I pushed it and took him to the Ohio State School for the Blind, now they're trying to buck me on it and saying, "Oh, he doesn't need it. We can meet his needs." It's like, you couldn't meet it then. You're not going to meet it now. Get out of my way. Leave my child alone. And he's going. We're now in mediation. It's just
so that particular. Sorry, that particular school is saying he doesn't need to be in that school.
He does not need to be in the Ohio State School for the Blind, but there's nothing they could do, and they feel like he should belong in a school setting but that's not, they're saying that he's not bad enough for that school setting. So if he's not, good enough and bad enough for school A, B, and C, where is he good enough for? He's getting A's on his report card.
Right. Yeah, as long as he's getting good grades on his report card, to me, that's evidence enough right there that doing very well where he's at, and there's no need for any changes. If they're having a hard time getting funding federal level for him, then, well, so be it. That's their problem. More like with the general public school that wanted to move him into that anyway to start with, not with you.
Well, the public school is the problem. I agree. And my son wants to go down and wants to go like 2 hours away to the school for the blind. Was saying, no, we don't want to pay for your transportation down there. Tax dollars down there. The school has transportation. Goes and he'll stay down there on campus Monday through Friday. Leave down there at 2:45 Friday. Come home and go back Saturday and Sunday night for school year.
Is anybody administratively at that school for the blind regarding the situation?
Yes, they're the ones that are helping me go for mediation.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. I would stick them.
Yeah.
I would stick them on it. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, the COLBs, they suggested I go ahead and do that even for my child. And so they said they're not too familiar with it, but it sounds like the way I need to go, school is doing.
Right. You need to take back a legal claim to the property. A lot of people are doing that in court, or even when like DHS or somebody comes to the house, for the children, and they're saying, show me your claim to my property, before I let you put your hands on anything, and they don't have any legal claim. They do, but they're not going to show it because that would just blow the lid off from everything, so they end up, a lot of them walking away. But gotta let some of them will slip through the cracks that way. Unfortunately, none of the people are keen enough on this information. So I would definitely move forward with getting the authenticated certificate by birth for the child. Absolutely can't hurt. And laying a claim to that property using that document.
Go ahead.
No, go ahead.
I was just going to say, I thank you guys for putting this information out there to educate us because it's been very beneficial.
I hope so. This is just a path of research that I started on independently myself. I've never been a member or even sat and listened to any of the or any of that kind of stuff. This has all just been done solely myself, sitting on the back porch on a computer. That's it. And picking and choosing, and believe in and what stuff I don't. And I think the real answers right in what the legislators themselves have written. I think, and that's as close to source as you can get. You can't get any closer to source. Right there, and they tell us we just have to play a little game of connect the dots. And I love seeing anybody get any kind of benefit from it. Gives us a chance to feel like, we're not helpless, because we know with any law that's written, there also has to be a remedy written into the law. Myself, I'm looking a little past remedy. I want cure. I want to fix the situation. And I've been doing it primarily for myself and letting everybody look at the information that I'm finding, let them follow along and And some of them, by using it, have been able to uncover some things of their own, so it's a group effort. And, the more minds working together on a project, the better. And information regarding that certificate of live birth and maybe the declaration of status is information that I kind of I'm going to be getting into later on in this call, depending on if we have anybody else with questions. Did I settle your questions?
Yes, I did. Thank you.
All right, thanks. I appreciate you calling in and asking. Whatever amount it helps you, maybe there'll be 10 other people out there that of information from it as well, we have anybody else out there that had a question or a comment, something they want to pipe in with? Silence.
If I may.
Silence. Yeah, how are you doing?
Fine, thank you. And I thank Sylvia for her question. So what you were saying is, there are people out there that are putting their child in the school and labeling them under private status.
This actually label them as a private student.
So the state would not have jurisdiction over them.
I imagine there's a degree of jurisdiction, but I don't want to come out and really say the things that I've seen that, for instance, the other kids had to go through in school that are exempted from, because there were things like that. But, without actually having experienced it myself or seen it firsthand, I don't really want to put other people's info out there that may even possibly be false, although I don't think it is.
My concern is after a specific amount of days, the child is considered truant, and of course, the state gets involved, and I'd like to avoid that if it's possible.
Yeah, no. My spouse's sister has gone through that same thing, and and the thing I told them is keep your kid in school. Sorry if you got to wake up to make sure your kid goes, but yeah, but you try and jump through the basic hoops. You know what I mean? Like keeping them in school, and if they can't be in, having sufficient notice or doctor's notes or whatever the case may be as to reasoning for it. But as the schools, depending on the state, some states require X amount of hours per year for a student. Some states require X amount of days. Those are guidelines that kind of have to be followed, and depending on if they're in high school or whatever, sometimes classes can be supplemented in to make up time as well. It just really depends on the county and state that you're in.
Thank you. I yield.
No problem. Yeah, I was able to see a lot of the background things that was happening with the public schools, more so than most people. My father spent his time in his latter years going around and opening up private schools at churches. Bring other churches that had already started their school, help them kind of figure out some of their problems and things like that. At the same time, I had friends who did go to the public school in the community where I was. Behind the scenes, some of the backlash from the townspeople regarding it. And it's one of the things as far as private school, it's one of the things that the county or the township or whatever that they hate. I know when I was in school, in the area of Michigan where I was on, the counties were getting anywhere from $4,500 per student per year from the federal government. Now, that's not including maybe whatever extra might have come from the county, from taxes, property taxes, etc. But they were getting that chunk from the federal government, and would come along and open up a school, and within a couple of years, it would have over 100 students in it. Well, you just do the math, 100 students times even $5,000 per student. And that's a big chunk of money for a community that might even be under 10,000 people to be losing from their school system. On top of it, it's totally undermining the whole purpose of the public schools by the federal government, a indoctrination. And you know, they want to get that kid in there when they're 6 years old, you know, for free preschool ahead of time. They get the indoctrination started a little bit earlier. And so you step back and kind of look at the whole game. It's like, it's pretty scary. It's kind of a scary situation all the way around. You know, topic I really don't like getting into, but, you know, we see how God, generic name, has been taken out of the schools, Bible's taken out of schools, prayers taken out of schools, and now we see in the back door in some of the school systems where they're ushering in teaching Sharia law and teaching the kids about that stuff, and somehow that seems perfectly okay. I really wish the parents that have kids in the schools would be a little more proactive, talk amongst each other, do school board meetings, and let them know, you know, screw you with the 1 minute time limit you're giving me to talk, because I'm going to say what I got to say. My kid's in this system. You wouldn't be receiving federal grants if it wasn't for my child in this system. And you wouldn't be receiving county money if it wasn't for my child in the system. And you all would be without a job if everybody else here understood the whole situation, the problem that's going on. And to me, that's one of the best things a parent can do. If they could get their kids into a private school, or if they're fortunate enough to even homeschool them, be even better. But,
if I may.
Hey, how are you doing, Judge Johnson?
Fabulous. I have a question that may throw a bit of a curveball in things. If you can register your product from the system.
Yeah, absolutely. Why not?
Now, there are probably new tricks and trips to get that done. Probably a claim in the record. Even though it is the corporation record, it's still the most noted public record going. For the sake of rescission signatures and all that, he did that with the voting thing, so, and that worked out well.
So, you know, and to me, the counter date with certificate of live birth would probably work perfectly there, because if they're saying that you've got to do this and this and this with this property, well, number one, it tells you it's not your property, but it's evidently the state's, you know. So let's have the state step forward and show us where their claim is at.
Yeah,
they're obviously claim. So show me your proof of claim.
Yep, no doubt. While in my particular set of circumstances, marriage certificate in a reversal manner as far as redemption of my bride's estate as a beneficiary. And I'm sure that'll thrill the magistrates of wherever it is this takes place, be it here in Colorado or someplace else. They'd better realize that they're dealing with somebody who's done their homework, and it would be just easier for them to cooperate rather than force me to be the authority as a landmass in taking full claim of their municipal corporation, regardless of whether the state of, county of, city of, or otherwise. Plus, I have the option at that point, since it's a merger document, the marriage certificate is, not a marriage document, as it likes to claim on there. What they're really meaning by the terms they use on there. Marriage is not marriage as in joining two people. Marriage is merger as in merging two estates. if you know how to reverse that so that you're not the slave trustee of that situation under state of as the god of that document, yet becoming the beneficiary and putting the state of in the position of trustee at trust, and they get to do what you tell them to do, then you're in a much better position for that which is produced by the union, and or also once it is cured and in a position to be done, you can also dissolve that trust formed by the document with a biblical version, and they don't have much to say about that at all. They can't really do much with it. I've seen 2 other relationships that did a separation of union, put that in the public record, and the company, both husband and wife work for the same corporation now, and they're not arguing one way or the other with it. They recognize it just as if it were a regular marriage certificate. Case is, in doing that, if there were issues at all, they have to, as you said, Brian, they have to bring forth the claim towards it. They can't just come dropping by and say, you know, we have authority over this. And so show me how before you start shooting. Question. And I would highly recommend, if they're going to drop in on me, and I'm saying this for any of the 3-letter alphabet agencies listening in on this call, if you're going to drop in on me, you better bring your company attorney with you. Because I intend on making sure that A, the weapons formed against me will not prosper, guns and tasers, AR-15s, etc. You're coming to a non-natural, a non-man-made weapon land situation, which means it's divinely protected. And if you're bringing an AR-15 with you, might as well just leave that in the car, because once you walk in the gate, that's it. It's an unusual zone for Yahweh God's protection, for lack of better phrasing. Steal the children once that time comes, simply because you will have no documentation for them. I won't have anything in the public record as such that these are my children, because I won't need to have anything in the public record. There'll be, the only documentation will be in the family Bible. There will be another statement witnessed, but that will be private. As you drop by, you're going to say, well, we have this claim, and I'm going to hold that piece of paper in front of you, and I'm going to say, in the name of the Lord Jesus Christ, Yeshua HaMashiach, you can't have them. Superior claim by this. They're going to say, we have guns. And I said, go ahead and use them. See how well that works out for you. By the time you get done emptying a clip that won't fire, you'll be saying hello to a couple of heavenly beings that will throw you around like rag dolls. Now, if that's where you want to go with this, then by all means, fire away. And that's where my faith stands on Scripture in Isaiah 54:17, Luke 10:19, in that situation. And with that, before I ramble on any further, I yield the floor.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I think even just bringing the weapons on, say, a quote-unquote weapon-free area, doing that itself is an act of violence.
It is. But I want to make sure that they're clear that they're stepping into a supernatural zone when they do that. About me not being a supporter of the Second Amendment. I'm a full supporter of the Second Amendment. If you want to have firearms, load yourself up. When the Holy Spirit back in '97 forbade me from getting firearms, and I was after a particular rifle. I was after a IBM 1951 M130 carbine that was they made specifically for the Korean War. And I still pretty much remember how to break that down. However, the Holy Spirit said no. Asked him why, and he said, because you'll be using my bullets when the time comes. You won't run out of those. You'll run out of mans. And they're talking about bullets. I'm reminding them later, and I said, at some point, if you using all that, in fact, the pastor of the 508 I'm attending, reloads on probably 10 different sizes of cartridges and calibers. Hear him rattle them off this morning. I'm going, okay. I said, how the heck many sizes are there? He said hundreds. There's hundreds of different caliber sizes. I'm going, great, but you've got those 10 or 15 down pretty well down. So yeah, and place that love their firearms, have their firearms. One of the elders there in his late 30s, early 40s, packs a 40 every Sunday. He's literally the guard for the place. Somebody walks in there with the idea of taking things down, they're going to find out otherwise with a 40.
Beautiful, beautiful.
Yeah, I'm fine with that as a whole. Now, if it gets past the 40, then it's my turn.
Yeah.
And that will be a much more interesting situation, calling down the heavenly host and pick the guy up and throw him out the door.
You know, I heard you bring up the word estate when you were speaking, I think, regarding your spouse or whatever.
Yeah.
And it's one of the things I want to nail on a little bit this evening.
Go right ahead.
So I just,
Correct me, please.
just
I'm using the wrong
no,
term.
no, I'm not. No, I don't believe so. This is the term estate, and I don't think a lot of people really know what the estate is. You know, in the scripture we hear about the angels leaving their first estate. You know, and that word is, it's like everybody knows the word, but I don't think a lot of people really comprehend what's behind it. You know, and we hear the words estate a lot of times when we think of, okay, maybe a big mansion surrounded by a wall, and the guy's got, I mean, he's got all his toys there, and that's his estate. You know what I mean?
Well, Brian, you and I both know that regardless of how that term is applied, it means the same in a secular manner, regardless of the guy with the airstrip or me with my little square foot landmass here. It applies the same. Everybody has one. It comes out of, while I deeply appreciate Kurt Kallenbach's research with his approach, the results that he wants to take with it. He doesn't want to claim anything on that because of the afterbirth perspective that he holds. In the exact opposite capacity. If it exists because I do, and that sac, umbilical cord, placenta, all that stuff, the afterbirth, the documents that go with that, and on down the line, the whole kit and caboodle, whatever, is there because I exist. I want it all. Now, they can keep their debt that they created because of their manipulations with all that. They can have that. I'm taking the assets in the name Yeshua. In the name Yeshua. I'm taking the whole flipping thing in the positive asset credit department in the name Yeshua. The rest of what they decided to lose on the issue is their problem, not mine. And that's where I stand with that, and I yield the floor.
Yeah, absolutely. Their whole system and everything that they've done and they've perpetrated on everybody, it has all been done in fiction. None of it's been done in fact. The only thing factual that we see is people sitting in prison or 6 foot under. But their whole system is based on fiction, and they can't deal with anything other than fiction. And what I've always thought of when it came to a state, not fictional, and in fact, I don't even think legally they look at a state as a fictional word. From the way it is in Black's dictionary, I use mostly Black's fourth. But the estate that we were all given dominion over what was the earth itself by our Creator. That was the original trust that was set up, and we were supposed to be taking care of this, and the fruits of it would be for our benefit as well. Black's fourth, when it talks about a state, what it says is the amount, degree, nature, and quality of a person's interest in land or other property. Real estate interests that may become the ownership being measured in terms of duration. And right there, what we're looking at is it's talking about the amount, degree, and nature for our interest in land or other property. You know, and we all know, for instance, our rights are our property. You know, the morals that we stand on, those are our property. You know, things that we create from our energy is our property. And it's measured by our interest in it, you know. If you, for instance, abandon it, which is what the corporation wants to say with the child, then that makes them say, oh, okay, you've lost interest. You don't have any interest in it, you know. But I want to play a little. Well, hold on. Did anybody else have a question or anything like that before I started babbling about what I was going to talk about? Nobody there? All right. I didn't write anything down other than just several words that, and I kind of wanted people to play a little game of connect the dots. Listen to the definition. Listen to what that definition is really saying. Okay. Game of connect the dots. I think I'll start out, if I can find it here. I'm going to start out with the word certificate, all right? Because things with like a certificate of live birth or whatever, and we need to comprehend what a certificate itself is and what it actually does, okay? Earlier, I was kind of getting into it with somebody and wanting to say that, you know, anything I was talking about was all BS and stuff like that, and you know, we're home of the brave. You know, all other countries strive to be like America or live on America, and you know, some of the things I've heard recently from people who've been abroad, the truth couldn't be much further away. I mean, it used to be that years ago when kids were going home, you know, we were told, eat everything on your plate. You know, there's kids starving in China. Well, now I'm hearing people over in China saying that those kids around the dinner table, that there's America, you know. And however, we know that this is all just part of the whole fear project that's used to control everybody. But, and I don't know, in this whole fear project, just little simple words are used on a common basis. Everybody just kind of assumes or presumes that they know what the meaning of the word is, that they hear like a certificate and good appreciation or something in school or whatever, and they think it's just a piece of paper, you know. But my viewpoint, my studying was to go right back to the source, go right back to where did I think that things actually began for me as a man or me as a child. It's creation. Because like I've said before, I remember sitting on the lawnmower mowing what felt like acres and acres of land and thinking to myself, you know, I'd see my parents going to work, coming home, they're in this routine. And what do I have to look forward to? Is that what I'm supposed to be doing as well as I get older? And how did I get thrown into this? And, you know, who dictated this, that this is the way it has to be or this is the way it's supposed to be? I didn't ask for this. Can't men themselves make their own decision as to how they're going to conduct their lives. Going back to the very original beginning of things, we know that in the first few days after our nativity, that information is given by the mom generally regarding her background, who the father is, his occupation, da-da-da. And from that info, they go and they create the certificate of live birth and a birth certificate. And you know, I use the word info a lot, and just the shortened version of the word information, because the word information itself has some behind it. if you go in, let me see if I can pull that up here, which actually I really don't need to. Black's Law says that information is knowledge of a crime. So right there on some people's certificates of live birth, the mother is listed as the informant, and which in Black's Law is someplace someone who has knowledge of a crime. Anyway, so the certificate is created. And a certificate in Black's Law 1 says a fact is formally attested. A document certifying the bearer's status to act in a specific way. 3, a notice by one court to another court is taken. All right. So I thought it was really curious that in number 2 of the definition, it said a document certifying the bearer's status or authorization to act in a specified way. When you look at the bearer, you know, one of the things that they want from you, if you go get a driver's license, they want is a birth certificate. They've upped the number of things they want now ever since the Act, but that's always been one of the very first documents that is wanted to be seen is to attest to who we are, although we know this is that it's not to be used as identification. Right there should throw everybody up a red flag, okay? Because what we are doing when we're using that document is we are not using it, hey, look, this proves that the flesh and blood guy here is a real guy. You know what I mean? They can see that, all right? A lot of people stand up in court and want to be the flesh and blood man or woman, you know, living, breathing. Do I not bleed? Do I not sweat? Da, da, da. Well, I think the courts can see that, all right? That's not a point of question. But in that definition, you know, it said it determines your status and it authorizes you to act in a specific way or a specified way. Okay, well, who acts in a certain way? How are you supposed to be acting? And how does this give you authority to act in a certain way? Somebody that's going to be acting in a certain way, they're doing that on behalf of something else. Those actions are for something else. A great example is when you're at your place of employment, your actions, they're being done for the employer. Okay, so when a corporation says that, you know, it gives you authority to act in a certain way, okay, well, that kind of sounds like you're an agent of something, okay? And agent, da-da-da-da. If you go to Black's Law, you're going to see all sorts of various roles for agents. Patent agent, private agents, processing agent, which actually that would be a good one to read. Processing agent, a person authorized to accept service of process on behalf of another. Okay. So then you jump over to registered agent, which is most fitting for what was created with that certificate of live birth. Create a office of person or an agent, somebody that was suited for process of service. Service of process can be as simple as getting pulled over and getting a speeding ticket. When they're giving you that ticket and you're taking it from their hand, you're accepting it as service of process. Okay. Registered agent, Black's Law, this is Black's 4th. A person authorized process for another person, it says, a corporation that is in a particular jurisdiction. So that person, it says, is the corporation. So this corporation, and I think that it can be better actually termed as an organization. You watch the video on judicial television where they're talking about the revised Article 9. That's exactly what they're referring to. They're referring to regarding the certificate of live birth. That it's actually proof of registration of an organization. And the name of that organization is your name, Joy Joy. Sitting this morning, just kind of skimming through it, it's amazing the things that you read and the things you learn. You just sit down with a Black's Law Dictionary and try and find out where are they coming from, and what are these pieces of paper that we're holding? What are they really? Because we know it's not us. And unfortunately, everybody's been tricked through their life into thinking, yeah, this is me. You know, if you ask somebody on the street, you know, who they are, proof of who they are, or even people are asked that in a store, you know, if you're going in to buy tobacco or alcohol or something, and we're in a situation where they need to know who you are, you automatically just go to the wallet or the purse and give them that piece of paper that was created by the state. And that was something I was thinking about the other day, and I think this runs true in all states. When I lived on Michigan, it was true there. I'm on Florida now, and it's true here as well, that if you don't have a driver's license, you're not able to get a driver's license, then you can just go get a state ID. And with that state ID, the number that is used, the exact number that would be the driver's license number, if you were to have one. And I find it really curious when I was thinking about that, because weeks ago, information talking about debtors and the location of debtors, a lot of that can be found in UCC 9 as well, where they're talking about identifying who a debtor is. And the only document they kept referring to was a driver's license. I thought that's really odd that the Uniform Commercial Code would be referring to a driver's license, because not everybody's really got a driver's license. There's a lot of people who live in the city, don't have a vehicle, never own one, probably never will own a vehicle. But yet they have to have ID, which reminded me of that fact that even just a state ID, that number that they use is the same number that they would put on a driver's license. So that's another one of these little numbers we've got following us around our life. Everybody's always worried about the Social Security number. Well, guess what? There's that other number following us around as well. I remember a few years back, bank account. When I was with that bank account, they needed some proof of identification. They wanted to see my Social Security card, which I never carry it on me. Anymore, I don't even carry a driver's license on me. I have a state ID on me anymore. But the driver's license I was carrying, and I kind of played dumb on the Social Security number. Well, lo and behold, that other number on the driver's license or on your state IDs that follows you around everywhere is directly linked to your Social Security number. And they're able to pull up my Social Security number with that. Fortunately, that driver's license did, at that time, I didn't have a Social Security card on me either. And so I just rattled them off, my Social Security number off the top of my head. Which all I'm going to say is may or may not be my number. So now, even here a couple months ago when I was changing my bank account and putting it underneath my DBA, they asked for the Social Security number as well. And I just asked, well, what do you have? And they showed me what they had, which is the one that follows around the driver's license number. I was like, yeah, okay, if that's what was on that account, put it on this account too. But the numbers running behind the scenes that people really don't pay much attention to that are following us. If we find a way, hopefully, to get rid of these numbers thing. But I think when it comes right down to it, the most important thing is just the rebutting or the rejection of that number. If they want to try and use it for a fictional character, fine. Part of the reason why I got DBA is because I figured, well, you know, you can't do anything about something that you didn't create or that you don't, or that you're not a holder of. And so if I'm now listed as the holder of that name, well, I think that probably puts me in a catbird seat to bury it as well. And looking at that info, I was talking about the identification of the owner. I was referring there as well as to Secretary of State. If people always stop and think, it makes perfectly logical sense, because if you want to do anything regarding some big company somewhere, and you want to talk to the CEO, you want to get something to the CEO, who are you going to go through? You got to go through his secretary. And so I was looking up the word Secretary of State just to see what they were saying about it. And one of the things that my funny bone a little bit was that the word directly after Secretary of State in my Black's Fourth was the word secret. Huh, that's interesting. So your Secretary of State is the holder of secrets as well, which is the same thing that I found where I was looking at these things from the perspective of, okay, we're an agency, where there is an agency, there's an organization that was created. They unknowingly have accepted the role as agent for the organization for service of process, okay? Well, in the relationships of an agent, every agent must have a principal. And, okay, now who are they claiming to be the principal? A lot of people always say, well, it's the U.S. government. The U.S. government is a fictional entity, and so it can't role as principal, such as I supposedly am supposed to be acting with the hat on of agent for service of process. But he is the one wearing the hat for principal. And you go and start researching titles, certificates, et cetera. And the holder of all of those for the state is the state, Secretary of State. And who are we going to, for instance, go back to the driver's license. So who are you going to when you're going to go get your driver's license? You're going to the Secretary of State, or an office of Secretary of State, which in some states is called the Department of Motor Vehicles, okay? And they're handling all this and transferring all this paperwork through the Department of Transportation. And Department of Transportation originally was Department of Commerce. A lot of people think about that a little bit, as far as all things being commercial, right? Just because they may have changed from Department of Commerce to Department of Transportation didn't mean that they quit handling commerce, right? So anyway, going into Blacks and looking at, say, it says the member of the President's Cabinet who heads the U.S. Department of State, where we get the second authentication done is at the Department of State level, right? That says the Secretary, ranking member, and also a member of the National Security Council. I wonder why they had to change that to she. I've always said he. Just kidding. Anyway, he or she is fourth in line succession to the presidency. Okay. And number two, a state government official who is responsible for the licensing and incorporation of businesses, of elections, and other formal duties. That kind of caught my eye when it said for the licensing and incorporation of businesses. Because I don't really see it was John Kerry or Hillary Clinton, how much work they actually do when it comes to the licensing of businesses, corporations. When you look at the aspect that you're getting your authentication done there, which is proof of an organization being created, now, that falls kind of underneath those categories as well. The administration of those things. And what's happening in that process, in my viewpoint, is actually a conveyance, okay? And people don't realize that when you're holding that document, you are the holder in due course, and you can claim that as well, because it makes it, okay? Whether you claim it or not is up to you. But the whole purpose behind doing it is to claim it. Because that now gives you beneficial interest in that document. And, talking about the beneficial interest in that document, you go back to what I read earlier in Blacks when it talked about the estate. It was determined on the degree of interest. Okay? So, those were some things I just wanted to follow there. A lot of this falls in lines with things that I'm seeing half a dozen other people starting to talk about out there, and which I think is really cool, because this is a direction, a path that I've been researching for half now. When I really started to come and figure out exactly what the situation is, what our relationship is to our so-called masters, put it that way, not my master, but I want to assume or presume. So, seeing now that there's many other people starting to, follow the same exact line of thinking, and other lights and other doors are opening up for them as they follow down that path. To me, it tells you, this is exactly what's going on, and this is exactly the way that being proactive on the situation with. People have thrown a lot of darts in the past and things, but they haven't really understood the capacity that they're supposed to be operating in, that's assumed that you're operating in right now. When I first started looking things up, the words that stuck out in my head the most, one, of course, was status, and then standing, and something that tied them together, which is the word capacity. And so if we're acting in the capacity of an agent, well, guess what? That's why we're getting served process. It's because we're unwittingly falling into that role. A lot of people find themselves in trouble, whether they get handcuffs thrown on them or whatever the case may be. And, I think the biggest part that get over with it, and where the majority of their anger comes from, is their lack of comprehension of what's really going on. In fact, they don't even realize that is where their anger is coming from. They think they're angry at the situation or at the cop and or the system that's sending them a bill for X amount. Unwittingly, I think the real anger is just a frustration. So they really don't know. They really don't know who they are or the capacity that they're operating in. I think once we start attacking things from the direction of capacity, then that's when you're really going to start to see a few changes come around. I don't know if anybody else was online here that's not snoring that had a question. I know a guy snoring probably doesn't have any questions. He must evidently have everything all figured out. So Don't blame me if I listened to me. I'd probably snore too. In fact, I make myself go to sleep every night as it is, so I can't be that exciting. So, DW, is there anybody else that had a question there? It's start, unmute, or whatever. I don't know if you're muted.
Yeah, just want to ask you a question. Feel free to chime in. Just unmute yourself, star.
I do have a question. Currently, my husband and I hold a concealed weapons carrying permit in the state of Ohio. So once we get our COLB, do we also get rid of that?
I wouldn't tell you to go and get rid of it. What I would do, is I've gone through that too, went through the course and all that. This is my direction of handling that, is when you're notifying the different ABC agencies that need to be notified regarding, because you're presenting, this is what I'm doing. I'm presenting the certificate of live birth with a declaration of status, and it's traveling along with it as a counter deed, okay? Because what I'm doing is I'm making a claim of control, not of ownership necessarily, but of control, right? And so, long story short, when you're sending out your notice to the different agencies, I would send one as well to the agency that issued that permit. Because what you're doing is you're going back to the status that people were at, if not before the Constitution, at least at the time of it, okay?
Okay.
And not to hash over the arguments of whether it Constitution really had anything to do with us or not. I don't want to get into that, but when you read through the Bill of Rights, you read through it, and like I said before, it's like you're reading something from a foreign country, you know? Well, it says we have the right to travel unencumbered. Well, no, we don't, you know? It says you have the right to keep and bear arms. Well, and get a permit, that's proof of that not necessarily being true either, you know? So what you're doing is putting yourself back on the land. And I said returning yourself to the status of a man or woman, if not prior to the Constitution, you know, at least when it was written, and you have the equal rights and protections that come from it. Would mean, in that case, then, that permit, that license is no longer needed, no longer required. And, you know, I would write a statement, you know, regarding that as well when you do a notice to that agency. And be very curious to see if they respond at all, and if so, how they responded.
Yeah, it would make some curiosity going on there.
You know, here about 5 or 6 months ago, I was pulled over down in Naples, Florida, right? I had to go down there to pick up a hide from a tanner. He had it for a while and then finally finished it. And on my way back, a couple unmarked cars pulled me over. They didn't like the tint on the vehicle, I think was what they had said. And they wanted to do a full search of the inside of the vehicle, which, you know what, let them do it. You know, if they're going to pigeonhole somebody or whatever, or plant evidence, if that's what they want, they're going to do it one way or another. Okay, so he asked me if I had any weapons in the car. No, in the car, they were in the trunk. In fact, there's a number of them in the trunk. Basically, I had been moving some stuff around at the time. But anyway, he searched the inside of the car, and he saw, like, for instance, my declaration of status as far as I've got it written so far and the things that I've got it done in it. And he read that, which kind of gave him a little bit of a heads up. Then afterwards, he asked if he could look in my trunk. And I said, okay. I said, yeah, you can look in the trunk. I said, but I will tell you there are weapons in the trunk. He said, well, when I asked you if there's any weapons in the car, why didn't you tell me? Before I could answer him, he kind of shrugged and he said, never mind. And he said, I guess you know that you don't have to tell me, don't you? So, I mean, we do have rights there, you know, and it's a matter of standing on them and claiming them, come right out and claim them or state them, because he had read some of the paperwork I had in the car. I mean, he spent about 20 minutes going through the inside of my car, and it's not messy enough for him to have to spend that much time. I think he was spending most of it looking at the documents myself, but so, I mean, he already knew that I knew, you know, which is what he'd stated. So, and I think that makes a huge difference with people. But I think once you send your notice to that agency, you know, and when people are sending these notices out, to me is a stressor, very, very important thing. Don't just, you know, pop them in the mail and sit back, okay? You send them to them, registered mail, you know, return receipt required, which means you're going to need to find the name of a man or a woman there that you're sending them to, all right? Send them there or find out who their agent for service of process is. Because all corporations have an agent for service of process, and that's what you're doing is you send it to them, and you also give them a timeline to respond back. And a lot of times people aren't going to hear anything back. Most of the time people won't. What I'm doing is I'm also sending them a follow-up on it. After my gracious time of 20, 30 days back, then I send them back a follow-up letter saying, listen, I sent you A, B, and C. I required that you respond back to me regarding it. You haven't. I'm giving you another 20 days. And it's the same thing that you do like with a debt validation letter. And when you hear nothing back from them again, you send them a third notice. Well, which basically says, okay, whatever I've said, I guess stands as truth. Thank you very much. Have a good day. You know, and that to me just adds a little bit more teeth to the event where people say, well, I sent them a notice, but I never heard anything back, so therefore it stands as truth because they never responded to my affidavit. You know, which is very true. But myself, I prefer to add a little more teeth to the process. My viewpoint, that's just what I'm doing. Like Judge DW said, it's not legal advice, but just the path I'm on. How long have you had your carry license?
3 years.
3 years? Okay, great. An open carry state or no?
Yeah. I can
Okay.
I can conceal it and I can openly carry.
Yeah, do you normally carry?
I don't open carry. I do carry in my vehicle because as a minister, I deal with some areas and I deal with some people who get into legal issues. But I'm very careful, you know, where it's located at, and that's how they'll reach.
Yeah, you've never had, have you had any situations with like a traffic stop or anything like that regarding with you?
When I was involved in a hit and skip, I did have, because when they run your plate, it comes across that you have it. And so I had a police officer say, you got your weapon and where's it at? And I said, I do. Normally I would have it, but I don't have it on me because I was just running somebody to work on me. But I do have knives in my van, and I do have pepper spray, and I do have tasers. That's
well, I don't want to mess with you.
Well, my husband makes me carry them. But they just stay put, you know. But Taekwondo, so I'm not really worried about weapons. To me, that's a waste of time. Because when you have these permits, they tag it to your car. You tell anyone, if you ever stop, keep your hands up, keep your nose clean, and don't do nothing stupid. I did have, in the county I live in, we do have a juvenile judge that a lot of people really would like to see disappear. And I was in a public place, and I had my gun on me. Scared me so bad because I thought, dear God, what if I'm the one that has to protect her life? For a while. Because I don't want to be put in that position, you know, but I didn't too awfully minded to, you know, to help other people out. But that mental image with the, that she is greatly hated in this county, I don't want to have to be the one to put my neck out on the line to save her life. So I quit carrying for 6 months until I could just get that mental picture out of my head.
That's one of the things that, to me, goes so overseen. Of course, the media isn't going to talk about it. Is that once somebody has taken like a concealed carry class and you do carry from time to time or whatever, whole new sense of responsibility. And these people are made to be looked at as though we're villains and domestic terrorists. And it is that we have a whole new level of responsibility, not to save our own, but also, you know, other people. And like I said before, you know, I've hunted and everything all my life, you know, and always been very comfortable with weapons, and even in the Marine Corps for a while. And after taking a concealed carry class, I took classes, gosh, almost 10 hours, but I had a whole new sense of responsibility, you know.
Yeah.
And yeah, and I really wish people comprehended that. You are far safer with somebody like that than you are just, let's say, an officer, but, you know, on the land in that situation has a different mindset than people realize.
Yeah, it's something one would never take lightly, to go through a course and to, you know, to get that different perspective. And I just think, you know, the reasoning for one to get a concealed weapons carrier permit varies. And for me, it was to protect my family and myself, because a man that's brutally sexually assaulted me threatened to come back to Ohio and kill me. Pull the trigger and you'll go to prison until the Ohio change that law. So the man, the 2 weeks before he was to come back to Ohio to carry it out, he ended up having a heart attack and dying. So he's the least of my worries.
About providing providence there. Definitely divine providence.
I just figured if the cops wouldn't protect me and they're going to threaten to put me in prison for protecting myself, then I was going to make sure that my family was going to be safe and I was going to be safe. So we were just, God really looked upon us and took care of that situation for us, and we didn't have anything to worry about.
Well, and you know, that's one of the things also, and I'm probably preaching to the choir here, but that the police have no duty to protect you. And there's several Supreme Court rulings out that say the exact same thing. You know, their duty is actually to the corporation that they work for, or whoever signs their check to that county or to that state. It's not to the street or in our vehicles or whatever the case may be. Fortunately, there's some great officers out there who do put their life on the lines for other people, but that is not a responsibility of theirs. Sheriff in Wisconsin came out and said the same thing. He told everybody, "Hey, the first line of defense is you. Go take a class." And Obama chastised him for that. But what was your first name? I think I missed it.
My name is Cindy.
Cindy. Talked to you in comments or in messaging before?
Yeah. I'm not sure, but I've seen it. I follow you guy on your Facebook group.
Oh, okay. All right.
What's your name?
Brian. This is
Brian. Yeah, I've been on your Facebook group, like everything that's going on. And I heard last night, was it Guy? Are you guys is Guy Penn part of the group?
He's a member of the group, yeah.
Yeah. Last night I heard him speak on another conference we were on. Are you guys having a call tonight?
You mean the group, Tactical?
A group call. I have on my calendar, you guys have calls on Sundays.
Right. Yeah. This is a call for tactical sovereignty, and then Judge Bruce's call comes on at 8 o'clock. The same phone number drifts right into his.
Okay, this is tactical sovereignty. Okay, I wasn't sure which group I was involved here with. You guys talk about the authentication, right?
Yep.
Okay.
Amongst a lot of our things.
Okay, sure. And what is the time of your call? Is it every Sunday? Okay, am I interfering with the call right now, or you got a call going on?
We're in the middle of the call right now.
Okay.
You're calling into it.
Okay.
Which is fine. Do you have anything you wanted to put in? As long as you're here?
Boy, I just got done doing a whole bunch of work and my mind's kind of racing. No, I'll just listen if you guys don't mind. And if I have a question, can I chime in, or how do you raise your hand?
Well, I think everybody is unmuted. We're kind of in a self-mute situation.
You guys are quiet.
Yeah. And there's some, I'll tell you, it's like you've got 20 people talking over each other, and at least maybe tonight they're low enough to prevent that, but it makes it a lot easier when you don't have a lot of people jumping in and out. But you're more than welcome just to chime in and state
Are you Brian Parker?
Something if you want.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Now I'm getting myself grounded here. Okay.
Okay. Yeah. And a lot of people this week have been asking me about the authentication too. Have you done an authentication on your certificate of birth?
And then this is something that's real interesting. Last night on the call I was on, they were talking about authenticating and then registering, doing your name change and then registering it. So that's what that was all about. And something that I learned, my authenticated birth certificate that I got done last year is not on bond paper. And she said it absolutely must be on the bond paper. So I have an authentication that was done with all the bells and whistles attached to it, but it's on just a little piece of square white paper, and I've had that for a long time. So I'm going to have to redo this authentication.
That's interesting. What state are you on?
California, but my birth state is Maryland.
Okay. All right.
Because apparently what you do when the process is finished is after you register and everything, then you surrender it. And so this is security.
Right. Right.
Right.
Well, yeah, surrender is one avenue that I see people taking. Right.
Yeah.
Where you're surrendering it at.
Right. And I don't know any of that yet. I'm just kind of learning from these people.
Well, I've seen people surrender it to the Treasury, but they sent it to Jacob Lou's office, and they got either no response or got it sent back to them. Which I think,
really?
Which I think Jacob's Lou's office is their incorrect office. I think you want to send it to the treasurer, which would be Rosa Rios. I think she operates on the private side. And
well, that's something I guess I'm going to learn, because this gal that I was talking to seems to have gone through the whole process, and things have changed for her since she's completed it, like really changed.
Awesome.
So,
yeah, I was reading something the other day on Rosa Rios's office and online, and it said that she held more of like a figurative position. Yeah, okay. Then you're saying that what she really does, they're not going to tell you about, I guess.
okay, right.
But
Rosa Rios, did you say her name was?
Yes, Rosa Rios.
Okay.
And she stepped down. I think she put in a resignation July 7th of this year, I believe. And like I said, I'm always checking in to see if she's been replaced or if there's an intermediary right now or what the case is. But I'm not seeing anything regarding that.
Interesting. Okay.
Now,
Step down. I wonder why.
I don't know. Maybe there are a lot of surrenders coming through. I don't.
Yeah.
But like I said, I'm not 100% comfortable on the surrender idea yet. I'm claiming that it's mine and I'm not letting go of it or anything like that.
Yeah, I'm still trying to understand it. But one of the things this gal talked about was November 20th for the Jubilee to be complete. Do you understand this whole Jubilee thing?
Yeah, I follow the Jubilee situation.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so she's saying it would be important for us to get our business done before the Jubilee is over.
Right, and that's what the Pope said when he was here as well.
Mm-hmm.
It said it was last November, December, whatever he was. And he said, there's a short window, take advantage of it.
Right. So next weekend they finished their webinar. This group on Saturday they're having another one, and so I'll learn a little bit more as to what all this actually boils down to. But it made a lot of sense to me about the authenticated birth certificate that I have, that it's not a security. I mean, I have like 5 of them, and I chose the wrong one. It's the only one I have that's got it's just a white piece of paper and with a raised seal from the Department of Health. A few others to choose from, and I didn't choose one of the bond paper ones. So anyway, live and learn.
Well, I was talking to somebody, it's kind of interesting. I was talking to somebody this morning from Maryland, and they said for the past few months, one has been doing that is so many people are going through this process, and that they're giving out people certificates that are not certificates. They're just on regular paper. They're not sending the bond paper. And
really?
So the challenge getting that bond paper one from
them?
I
have it.
Know.
I have it in front of me. I just need to get it authenticated.
Okay. All right.
Yeah, see, I had like 4 of them in my drawer, and I actually chose the wrong one to send to the authentication, only because I thought it looked more official. Well, I wasn't thinking straight, because I do understand the number on the bond, and the white one that I sent in, the certificate of live birth, it doesn't have any of that. It's bizarre. The other thing that's interesting about it is my upper and my middle name, my first and my middle name are in all uppercase, and my last name is in upper and lower.
Huh, that's weird. I've kind of heard of them going the opposite direction with that before. But,
Yeah, my husband's is
my-
all in upper and lower.
Yeah, my certificate of live birth came on bond paper, and it's an upper lowercase.
Yeah, she told me that it has to do with the legal terms capitis maximus. Do you understand those?
Mission maxima. There's
Right.
There's minimus.
And medium.
Medium and maxima. Right.
And
Which
minimum.
is,
right.
Right.
So yours is minimum.
Loss of rights. Right.
Uh-huh. Okay,
Well,
so that was new to me. I didn't know that before as well. I learned that yesterday. And on my example, authenticated birth certificate, that would be an example of the minimum, because I have the last name in upper and lower, but the first and middle are in all uppercase. But the other one that I have that I'm going to send in that's on bound paper, it's all in uppercase.
Right. Well, the upper and lower case is at minimum. That's medium. That's media.
Oh, it is?
Yeah. Right. The minimum would be all lowercase.
Oh, okay. Gotcha. Who did you say? Someone you know has all lowercase?
I don't know anybody with all lowercase. Mine is upper lower.
Gotcha. Okay. Yeah.
In
So
fact,
anyway, I learned some things on that.
The majority I've seen are upper lower.
Interesting.
Yeah, that's Trial is one of the ladies doing that webinar.
That's the gal.
Yep, she's a good gal.
Yeah. So anyway, I learned a lot, and we were on that call for, I think it was 3.5 or 4 hours last night. It was crazy.
It was
crazy. I mean, I thought for sure I'd be dropping off, and I was so interested in was being discussed that I was like wide-eyed and bushy-tailed. It was crazy. It just energized me.
Yeah. You didn't go to sleep for another hour or two after you got off it.
Oh yeah, my brain was just on fire. We all know how that feels, right?
Well, this is indeed a can of worms for sure.
Mhm. That's for sure.
And but I would suggest as well, when authenticated, I would also suggest to go in, see if you can get a couple more copies of it.
You mean get a couple more copies of birth certificates and have them authenticated at the same time?
Oh, yep, absolutely. Absolutely.
And what's the purpose of, what would I be using 2 or 3 more authenticated ones? Tell me that.
I know some people have sent them to, first it goes to the Secretary of State, at the state of your nativity for authentication. Then after that, of course, it's going to John Kerry's authentication office. And I've heard a few people where transit.
Well, that would stink. But here's another important thing that, what's her name, Trial? What she said that made me think I better not authenticate more than I need is that if the current Secretary of State is not the current one who did yours, you would need to redo it. Have you ever heard anybody say that?
No, I haven't heard that before.
It seems to me that if the current Secretary of State is authenticating this as of July 15th, 2015, which it shows on that front page, that it should be okay for as long as I need it that way.
Right.
So are there other people on this call right now that can answer that question? Have they heard of that?
Has anybody heard any info regarding that that's on this call?
If I may, this is DW here. Actually, I never heard of. What I've heard, when you get your certificate of live birth or BC done, authenticated at the state's office there, as long as your nativity occurred on that state, it would be something to look into, you know. But that's the first time I've heard that, so something that, you know, I'll write down here and look into it.
I didn't hear everything you said. Did you, Brian?
No, that was really, really garbled, DW.
Yeah, hold on one second. What I meant was what she brought up about the fact that, what was it, July 2015?
Uh-huh.
There's a new Secretary of State appointed, then you have to get re-authenticated. Is that where you're coming at with this?
That's what she was saying, that she felt that Secretary of State to come into office, if you're trying to use it during a new Secretary of State, not the one that you had, that you would need to redo it. And I question that.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not gonna say it's a yes or a no, like do it or don't do it. I always was led to believe that wherever you were born, it occurred on whatever state you it happened. That would be ultimately the state that you go through to get your authentications done. Now, if there's any confirmation, I don't know. I can't sit here for sure and guess or assume that no, she's wrong, or yes, she is, because I don't have the facts in front of me, you know.
Well, I do have the state of Maryland's authentication with the seal. And then what seals the deal is when you send it to the Department of State and the Secretary of State, and they bind it with that little grommet. Rivet. Yeah. Yeah. That's what does it. You need all pieces.
Yeah.
But what she was saying is that if, and you know, we're going to have another call next Saturday, and I'm going to bring it up again because I thought more about it. It doesn't seem to make sense to me. Why? This person, this John Kerry's signature is signed with an assistant authenticating the information attached, and it's saying what date they authenticated it. What difference does it make?
Yeah.
So,
and I'm sure regardless of what happens with the new Secretary of State, the decisions and treaties with like Iran and things that John Kerry signed will still hold water.
Yeah. Yeah, well, that was part of the reason I was thinking that didn't make sense. It's like, oh, does everything else have to change because there's a new Secretary of State? So, yeah, that exactly.
Two, you know, I mean, we're not trying to apply this on any type of situation. Please don't take this for face value here. Just, you know,
right.
Mind-blown question here, or a statement here. You think of the Grandfather Act or the Grandfather Clause or whatever the case may be, you know, when a corporation incorporates or creates or adds, or, you know, to an existing policy or a new policy, they can incorporate what is called, or they would have in place of the Grandfather Clause or Act, or anything prior to that still say, you know what I mean? Prior secretary signed something that is still effect forever, in a sense, you know, because all they're doing is verifying the
right.
Correct me if I'm wrong, the, you know, the notary signatures or the official signatures and seals.
Right, exactly.
And they're creating somewhat of you have somewhat of like original. And then once you notice these agencies, especially the vital statistics, vital records, you're pretty much saying, I have claim of that title, you don't. It's really the original, because now you have claim of the original. So,
yeah, my understanding is that actually makes it an original.
Yeah, yep, it does. Because you're doing business in another country, a non-Hague country. So, exiting out of the a system, in a sense, in so many words. I'm not saying it's a complete exit. Don't quote that, okay?
Right, no. And what Tyrell said, or I don't know how you say her name, but what she said was that ends because you have to go and register as well. You have to change your name, get a decree from the court, and then you go register this. And I don't know all those steps because that's what we're going to talk about next week. Was anybody else on the call that's listening to this right now?
Yeah, also, believe it or not, Brian, we almost had Terrell on the call tonight, but I guess her charger battery is going low, so the wife is going to work on her a little more, see if we can get her on next Sunday, maybe after all her webinars are cleared, maybe next Sunday, having her as a guest speaker. If she don't mind, you know, I'm not trying to put her out there that she is going to be on the call, maybe asking her, maybe, you know, come on, spread some words of wisdom, you know, what she has, scratch her mind a little bit. But,
yeah, that would be a good idea. Yeah, that'd be a good idea after she gets done with, you know, her 2 classes. You know, she may very well like to come on and and talk about some things. And so it'd be interesting to find out some information about that from her.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it
I'm
sounds like she's been through a lot of experiences, and things did change after she finished this process. So.
Now, keep in mind, and we're all, and this is what I try to preach all the time, to come together. You know, the minds, you know, gathering of the minds, you know, and that's why the discussion group is why it's labeled on the end of this. The Matrexit is that when we're discussing certain processes that we've successfully maybe, what do you want to call it, successfully got, or confirmation or what have you, and we get together. Like, say, for instance, my process, well, not my process, but this process I've been following, it's a bumpy road, and then somebody chimes in, oh, well, yeah, that's the process you need to do, but you need to do this, this, and this in order for this, this, and this to happen. And that's why I'm trying to get everybody together. And it's not going to happen, but, you know, for the most part, let's get a group of people together. You know, Brian's very intelligent. I'll put that out there, Brian. And just kind of like, just scratching minds here, you know, putting stuff together here, you know. I know a few weeks back that Judge Doucette released I'll put this out here, declaration of status. And there's a lot of ups and downs on it, but in the long run, that's not the only thing that needs to go on in securing yourself out of the system. And I don't know if you're familiar with that. We're not going to entertain that, but, you know, certain people put there or process and then abandon it or just leave it there. And I want others' inputs on it, you know.
Right.
And I think help out in the long run, because we're all trying to get it out of the system. The people that are reaching out, I don't want to say people, personal, yeah, I'll say people. They're trying to get out of the system. We're all, and I believe, getting together and working together to achieve that common goal. In the end, who's going to win? The de facto corporate fraudulent government, or the de jure, we the people standing on the land, living men and women? You know, you got to look at that point of view, you know. But I yield on that.
Yep.
Oh yeah, it is definitely a group effort, and you know that sometimes we tend to feel like the one-eyed man in the land of the blind. You know, I'm not sure how bright I am, but you know, we've all got nuggets and bits and pieces of the puzzle, and we're putting those pieces of the puzzle together. And I think that's the important thing.
I think it is good when you bring a large group together, because everybody can add in what has or hasn't worked, and that's how you put those pieces together.
Yep, absolutely, absolutely. And just so many people out there that I talk to, or I see them talking to others. I look at their conversations, and they just snap on each other, you know, and claiming that, well, you know what? If you've got the answer, then what are you doing on this thread?
Exactly.
You know?
Why would you be wasting your time, you know, trying to search? Because that's what we're all doing, is trying to search for all the.
Yeah. What? How can anybody claim that anybody else is wrong?
Oh, there's exactly. There's more than one way to skin a cat, and if the gal that I'm studying with right now, Tyrell, if she's got something that works, I don't believe she's the only one. I'm sure there's other people that are doing other things, but you know, I can't study a bunch of people. So I don't even know how I found her, honestly, but I'll tell you, it was super interesting.
Well, you know, there's a reason why we all end up coming together, you know, and I think a lot of us have been studying things from a certain aspect, and we're kind of meeting each other at the door of the kingdom, as we've been following the correct paths, you know. And
I hope so. I'm feeling better now than I think I felt a couple years ago.
I know that she's apparently had a lot of success with things that she's done, so I think you definitely came to a right place to do a webinar or whatever.
Yeah. I just want to be left alone. I just want to be in peace. So that's what she's been finding, and I think that's what's very intriguing to me. She literally put a cardboard She put a cardboard license plate on her vehicle, and they pulled her over and they ran the numbers and they said, "Have a nice day." I mean, seriously, are you kidding me? They did end up taking her car. I don't know that whole story, but the car's still sitting there. She basically told them, if I were you, I wouldn't do anything with that vehicle until we get this thing settled, blah, blah, blah. I don't know the whole story, but anyway, she told some very interesting stories.
Yeah. And like I said, the processes a lot of us have been looking at, an aspect we've been looking at from is evidently working. Like I said, she's had some success, or a lot of success rather, and she's definitely a great person to study with. She was
Well, I'm glad to hear that, because I didn't know her
across.
from anybody else.
Yeah.
Somebody told me about the date, and it was like 3 days before it happened, and I'm like, okay, that sounds like something I really need to hear. So it turned out to be very, very interesting.
And she's not charging an arm and a leg either. She's very, very reasonable. I would be doing it, but unfortunately I'm working on those days, and that is our busiest night of the week, so there's no way out of it. Although, you know, I have a pretty good handle on the information she has, I think, so.
Oh, well, that wouldn't have been anything new for you then. But and also the other thing that was helpful was everybody else asking their questions, which kind of went on a lot, and some people weren't too happy about. Well, for me, I learned a lot from from those questions, so it was worth listening.
You learn a lot from a Q&A period, and I think a lot of people, where somebody finally they're in queue to ask a question, and their name gets called or whatever, and they ask their question, and you know, I'll be darned, but if it wasn't somebody 3 people back that just asked that same question, they just covered the whole thing. So there's people that listen to the Q&A, but they don't sit and learn from the Q&A. They just wait till it's their turn and they hear their name or something. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it's like, that's very frustrating, because you get more from a Q&A period than you get from anything.
Mm-hmm.
But all right, at about 14 minutes before the hour, Judge Bruce's call went on here, and so I want to clear a path for him and for the people that are going to be calling in to listen. He's bringing forward this evening. I invite everybody as well. DW has set up a webpage, America.solutions. America.solutions. It's got a lot of info on there. He's even set up a little like beginners section there
Nice.
for people that are maybe just starting to learn the info, so they can go there as well. He's had that site up for, I think, about a month now, and it's got well over 1,000 hits. Correct me if I'm wrong, DW.
Well, I think we're up to 2,000.
Beautiful. So
Nice.
yeah, a lot of people are finding it, and there's good info on there. So I just wanted to plug that for people, and you know, instead of waiting for something new to get posted into Tactical Sovereignty or like Legal Deception, or you know, something from Trial or Randall Harris, that we can go there and get solutions as well. Well, you want to sign us out, Judge DW?
Yeah. Thank you for attending the Matrexit discussion group. Actually, wow, we're on 14 now, Brian. So,
wow.
Be our 14th episode, 14th week. Been doing this 14 weeks, so stay tuned. We might have to reset the conference board. Stay tuned for that as well if you want to stay on. That's call beyond at 8 o'clock here, Eastern Standard Time. This is W with the news.